Here in the city, so if you have to describe the city in a sentence or sum up the city, how would you do it?
In a sentence.
Yes.
I think, especially after the heritage walk yesterday, it's the historicity of the city that really speaks to me. I think everywhere we walked, everywhere we went, there was something about a certain aging, but also a beautiful aging about it, which really talked to me.
So, Ms. Nitoo Das will be asking you a few questions. That was just a warm-up question.
Okay.
So, okay. Why do you think poetry readings and poetry festivals are important?
I think also because it goes back to a more oral form of poetry, which is how poetry started. And even though I really think that reading words on the page, it is important. Sometimes when you hear a poet reading his or her work, you also get a different sense of the pace, the rhythm, the pauses, huh? Where the poet pauses, there's meaning in the pause, in the gaps, in the silences. So I think it's important to listen to poets read their work.
And also the emotions.
Yeah, perhaps.
Okay. What do you think connects cultures across the world? Is it words, is it emotions, or is it practical experiences?
Um, were literatures around the world, cultures across the world. Um, I actually do not think it is possible to homogenize cultures in this way, because historically, even in a tiny place, there are so many differences. There's so much heterogeneity. Uh, to 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 actually think that there would be a possible blanket something that connects all of us, I find slightly problematic to even process. But I think it is through these differences, through this heterogeneity perhaps, that we can, if we wish to, forge some kind of um, understanding through the slippages rather than the connections. I would like to, see whether through this misunderstandings perhaps, or miscommunications in language, there is the possibility of uh, coming to a connection through debate, through discussion, through questioning each other, rather than thinking of similarities, but perhaps problematize this lack of similarities and then move towards something that we could all work with.
Okay. And how do you conceive a poem, or does poetry just happen to you?
No, poetry, I actually do not really believe in inspiration. It happens once in a while, very rarely for me. I believe in the poet actually working with what she has, her words, um, and I also believe very firmly in the process of editing, which I call the in a way it's the poet's agency, which I feel is more important than inspiration.
And lastly, as a reader,
Mhm.
what appeals the most to you, the poet's voice or the poet's alter ego?
Uh, this is a difficult question, because uh, you see, even when the poet is speaking in a different voice, even when the poet is constructing a persona, there is the poet's ideologies, the poet's what
Inspirations?
history, I would say, huh? The poet's life narrative, which will in a way impact the writing of the poem. So I'm not really saying that it's biographical in nature, but there will be some kind of ideological apparatus which will enter the mood, the tenor of the poem, and that's what I read as a teacher too, and not merely as a poet. I'm interested in how who the poet is actually kind of breaks into the artificiality of the voice, if you want to put it that way.
Okay. That's a lovely thought. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for taking the time and answering the questions. So,
Thank you so much, Ruth. Very interesting questions.
thank you.